Oh my gosh, the news. It just keeps coming. I hate it. I seriously hate it. And here's some of that news, which I love. They're liars. You know that, right? You know how they're all liars. Do I even need to specify to whom I am referring? Actually, I probably do, because there sure are a lot of liars out there. In this case, I'm talking about the GOP, who are liars. And I get it, lies are fun to tell. Everyone at my gym thinks my name is Rolly Archdale and that I'm a British widower. And while we here at Rolly Shody often point out lies used by the far right to justify their terrible opinions and policies, it's worth noting that lies are also seeds. You plant them down, like a foundation, so not like seeds, more like cement. Lies are like cement, cheap, defective cement. If a person is enough of a grifter, they would perhaps build a figurative structure on top of this defective cement, or a literal structure if you're Donald Trump in the 90s. And so I guess my point is that today, we're going to identify some of these foundational lies being laid right now before our eyes. Like eggs. Lies are like egg seeds made of cement. Cheerio! All the hot new lies to keep an eye on. Can't stress this enough, there are a lot of lies going around out there. That tends to happen when you put liars in charge of the government. After all, if you're doing stupid and bad stuff, how else do you justify it besides lying? So we had to boil it down a bit. And what follows is going to be a lot of lies that are being used to justify current bad policies and ideas that happen to also be laying the foundation for other bad policies and ideas. That's our criteria. The MAGA world has, for a while now, been building a rich realm of fantasy where doing terrible things is good actually. And the following lies are like the new characters being introduced into that world. A lot of them seem small in the grand scheme of lies, right until you bring them to their natural conclusion. For example, the first lie is probably something you completely forgot about. A mere speck of plankton in the ocean, flowing from a man who looks equally salty and polluted with mercury. Vaccines contain aborted fetus debris. We could, and likely will, say a lot of words about the many lies that RFK has oozed out of his Dick Tracy maw. He's like a Play-Doh fun factory for lies, or that 90s Monster Face toy, but for lies, and also worms. But because we all died and are living in the Vanilla Sky Matrix universe, he is somehow the Secretary of Health and Human Services. His first big task is that he's vowed to find the cause of autism by September of this year, because all the best and truest science discoveries are scheduled in advance. Gee, I wonder what he'll reveal. But we're not actually here to talk about Robbie's weird crusade against vaccines, as if he once caught his wife sleeping with a booster shot. No, that foundation of lies has been laid out for a long time now. What I want to point out is a single lie tucked between all the other lies, the salami in the sandwich of lies.
Because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and DNA particles. So they don't want to take it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it right now. There is no aborted fetus debris in any vaccine. I'm not a science pervert, so I probably can't explain it well. But as other science perverts have explained, one of the first steps of developing a vaccine is to grow the virus in a cell. Fetal cells are apparently good for that because they were created in the vacuum of a womb. In the case of the MMR vaccine that he's referring to, the weakened rubella virus is being grown in something called a cell line. That's a collection of cells that have been reproduced from a single source in the past. And in this case, that cell line came from the lung tissue of a single aborted fetus from the 1960s. Just the one. So while the cell line they use came from a fetus, it's not a fetus anymore, nor was the cell line ever. It's like the great-great-granddaughter of the cell line of a fetus or something. And maybe, for some people, that's still not acceptable. But it's certainly not what RFK is describing. Again, I'm not a science pervert, just a regular pervert. Not to mention that we're just talking about the part where they grow the altered virus to make the vaccine. This is all to say that claiming the MMR vaccine is made from aborted fetuses is like claiming that humans are made from mammoths because we once hunted them. Again, I think. Maybe there's not a perfect analogy, and maybe we don't need one, because I just explained what's actually going on there. See how science is neat when you're actually curious about it and not just saying weird lies? But of course, by using the phrase aborted fetus debris, RFK gets to make it sound like vaccines and abortions are made in the same godless factory that probably produces Taylor Swift albums and the gays. It also has the added bonus of making abortions sound especially violent. Does he think abortions have a splash zone? And that's actually what I want to focus on. RFK Jr. has been pretty whatever about reproductive rights, so it's hard to know if he's doing this on purpose. But by lumping anti-vaccine talking points in with anti-abortion talking points, RFK is on track to weld together the pro-lifers and the raw milk trad wife weirdos, right? I mean, there's probably already a lot of crossover there, but we literally just saw the kind of violence the anti-choice crowd can drum up. Just imagine if they also pin abortions on the makers and takers of vaccines. It's just something to keep an eye on is all. The GOP has been pretty quiet about abortion now that they overturned Roe v. Wade, and in fact, seem to know that the subject makes them very unpopular. But that absolutely doesn't mean they're not quietly looking for ways to further restrict reproductive rights. For example, while they are supposedly leaving it up to states, the Trump administration sure is butting into the states' decisions around abortion. You know how the Supreme Court just helped South Carolina defund Planned Parenthood? Trump helped do that. Specifically, Trump's administration took part in the oral arguments for that court case. They also dropped a Biden-era lawsuit so that Idaho can ban abortions across the board, even in an emergency situation, with the exception of a single hospital system. This means that they now have to literally airlift women out of the state in order to get certain critical care. This is all to say that, even when people aren't talking about it, they are always attacking women's health. It's just one more terrible thing to heap on the pile of other terrible things we now have to keep track of. There's that war, abortion stuff, trans rights removal, terrible ICE arrests, and the oligarchy. Nice little mnemonic for all you Star Wars fans out there, Watto! And cutting Medicaid, but that wouldn't have been as pew pew pew, so we went with Watto. Anyway, if you're curious, there's a handy guide about this that you can read called fucking Project 2025. You know, that thing they lied about and pretended to disavow during the election that they are absolutely using to guide the administration. To quote that thing, the Dobbs decision is just the beginning. Conservatives in the states and in Washington, including in the next conservative administration, should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. Hey, that sounds exactly like what the Trump administration is doing by butting into these states' decisions, doesn't it? Also, just to take a step back, that word unborn is pretty amazing when you think about it. They're waging a war to protect people who literally don't exist yet. Unborn! But there's more, of course. Some of the things they plan to do are cut funding for any state that doesn't keep a close record on who is getting abortions. Obviously, eliminate abortion access for immigrants. Obviously, and also push to make fetuses, all of them, legally recognized as people, which would just, ban abortions nationwide. But at the moment, they are trying to revoke the FDA's approval of the abortion pill mifepristone. See, it turns out that most abortions in the US are through pills. Seems like it's not a very violent or invasive procedure, not much debris to sprinkle into the vaccines. So of course, a handful of conservative-led states are suing to either limit the drug or have the drug pulled completely. They probably don't like that women in their state can get this drug mailed to them. Too much autonomy there, Anyway, and coincidentally, Project 2025 also talks about these abortion pills as, quote, the single greatest threat to unborn children in a post-Roe world. They call out mifepristone by name. Now, to be effed and bead, Trump's DOJ is actually working against these conservative lawsuits. However, to re-F those Bs, some have theorized that they don't want to set a precedent that blue states can take advantage of, and would rather just have the FDA ban the pill. The good news there is that the current FDA commissioner has no plans to restrict the drug unless new information arises. But wouldn't you know it, right after he said that, a conservative think tank released a study saying that mifepristone caused serious side effects in 10% of its users. Known coward Josh Hawley called it damning new data that the FDA commissioner can't ignore. And indeed, RFK has since asked the FDA to review this new study. The only snag was that the study in question was, lying. Because they're liars. That's the premise of the episode after all. Turns out this liar study took the expected side effects of the drug, like vaginal bleeding, and just rephrased it as other scarier things, like hemorrhaging. The study also included people who were prescribed the drug for non-abortion uses, such as recovering from miscarriages. It's a liar study made specifically by liars to lie. It's also something we're going to see a lot of. You know, now that a weird liar is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Although, to be even more F and way more B, at least this liar study for liars wasn't a report literally generated by ChatGPT that simply made up a bunch of studies that didn't exist, causing cited scientists to say, I didn't write that. But generally, when talking about foundational lies, I don't think people fully realize how many bad studies are going to come out of this RFK era. If we're lucky, it'll simply set back science and health by 4 years. If we're lucky, that's the lucky version of events. Anyway, let's do another lie by liars. Gay parents make kids dysfunctional. You know, I'm realizing that we might have oversold these as hot new lies when they're more like lies they've been saying forever. Opposite of new. A better way to describe it is that these are new approaches they are taking to make the same lies they've always made. In this case, there is a portion of the far right that is still pretty miffed about gay people existing. Let's be frank here. After Roe v. Wade was unborn, a lot of people are wondering if Obergefell v. Hodges would be next. The, I guess, good news is that it's a long way off, hopefully. A great deal of Republicans simply don't want to take on gay marriage. It would involve a lot of fancy steps. The Supreme Court would act first, but then Congress would have to repeal the Respect for Marriage Act, which is an act that repealed another act, the Defense of Marriage Act, and requires the federal government and all states to recognize same-sex and interracial marriages. Repealing that would require 60 votes, or I guess challenge it in court. It's a lot of work to do something that the majority of Americans would find unpopular. The legislative equivalent of making a Lone Ranger sequel. Of course, that didn't stop them from overturning Roe v. Wade. And let's be honest, they'll probably make a new Lone Ranger at some point. But unlike being anti-abortion, being anti-gay marriage is actually not that unpopular with Republicans for now, because it turns out that this is changing. The slim majority of conservatives who were down with the gays is now at 41%. And so if I were perhaps a bigot, like imagine me with the same beard but bigoted, then I would see this as a moment to try and push some lies about gay married couples.
A child being in foster care is far from an ideal scenario. It's very, very sad. A child going to two gay parents, I think is worse. I think it's easily worse, actually.
Why?
It's just more disordered. It's more confusing for the child. Again, neither scenario is good. We don't like either thing, but I don't see going to, gay parents as an improvement over the what they had before. So
do we know that it screws kids up, or we just sort of intuitively know it?
I think we intuitively know, but also there's been plenty of studies done about the mental health effects of kids that grow up in these, single-sex, same-sex parent homes. There's been a lot of studies done about it, but honestly, you can look at the studies, people will fact check, and they're there. I don't need studies for this.
Man, it is wild how they will push adoption as an alternative to abortion and then try to police who gets to adopt as well. So Matt is wrong here, of course. Of course he's wrong here. When it comes to adopted kids, there's been no difference found in the parental influence from same-sex couples versus heterosexual couples. Love is love is love, according to the research findings. I probably don't have to use science to prove this, but I could because it does. Matt Walsh is a Weasley little bigot who made up this claim due to his bigoted ideas and feelings, and then when asked if he's just feeling this instead of facting it, he very obviously just lied and made up that there were studies that prove him right. He alluded to the idea that, I'm sure people will fact check this, because he knows he's wrong and that the studies show that he's wrong, and that this is just based on his feelings. He can't even argue his feelings, because he says that having foster parents is better than having adoptive gay parents, because it's, quote, more disordered, more confusing, which on its face is absurd. It's not more disordered or more confusing to have permanent parents than temporary parents. What a willfully stupid evil man. So instead of the science, I'd rather just point out how fucked up what Matt Walsh is saying is. He's confessing that he would rather kids stay in foster care than have gay parents. And boy, does that really give away the game for a lot of the far right. They'd rather punish someone they hate than reward someone in need. That's it. There is currently a decline in foster care adoptions right now, specifically, and racistly, that decline is even greater for black kids. Oof. This country sucks. Meanwhile, gay couples are not only much more likely than straight couples to take in foster children, they are also more likely to take in children different from their own race than straight couples. For the right-wing pro-life crowd, gay parents should be seen as angels descending upon this godless earth to save humanity from the baby killers, choosing to care for any of God's children. But alas, they also hate gay parents and people. So instead, they have to make up lies about how having two daddies would confuse the child until they spiral and drill their own brain like that guy in the movie Pi. By the way, you know who else is overrepresented in foster care? LGBTQ kids, of course. This country, it sucks. We've been down this road before, by the way. Back during his first term, Trump sided with adoption agencies that wanted to reject gay applicants. Today, both Project 2025 and Trump's attack on birthright citizenship have thrown adoption into question, because they can't go after gay marriage yet, but they can certainly start chipping away pieces of it while GOP lawmakers begin to circle the idea of challenging marriage equality. Because they're never gonna let this go. The religious conservative path will always lead in this direction. 1,000 years from now, even if we're a progressive utopia, whatever conservatives are, possibly some sort of George Bush cyborg or a sentient ball of light that hates balls of different colored light, will be making proposals inching us back to this point. First, they'll go after trans rights, then gay adoption, then gay marriage, then gay rights in general, and so on. The ultimate goal, for people like Matt Walsh at least, is to dehumanize and eliminate. It's kind of why he shouldn't have a platform or a beard. He didn't earn that beard. And speaking of, it's time for ads. Beards aren't cheap, you know. You like Papa's beard? Well, then watch these ads. The news, as used news junkies know, is all about perspective. Was Watergate good or bad? It all depended on which podcast you listened to back in whatever decade that happened. And these days, it's way easier to know what perspectives the media is pushing because of Ground News, which you can access via the QR code on the screen. We reached out to Ground News specifically because that app helps us here at the Shody analyze these newspectives. For example, you know the Trump administration brought these charges against Kilmar Abrego-Garcia and is now trying to prosecute him by getting someone who's actually been convicted of crimes to say that Abrego-Garcia was part of some big human smuggling operation? You know, that's happening. Well, it's very helpful to see how different outlets are presenting that information. For example, the Independence headline said, "Feds release star witness and 3-time felon to keep Kilmar Abrego-Garcia in jail." While the AP is going with, "Star witness against Kilmar Abrego-Garcia won't be deported, court records show." I don't know. I think it probably helps to see that Mr. Get Rid of the Criminals is releasing someone who's actually been convicted of crimes just to try and nail the guy they accidentally shipped to a foreign gulag. At any rate, go to ground.news/SMN to get 40% off unlimited access and do the exact sort of trenchant analysis I just did. That's 40% off the Vantage plan at ground.news/SMN. The link is in the description. Where else would it be? I mean, tattooed on my knuckles? Can you guys just add tattoo on my knuckles in post? You can't or you won't? You can't or you won't? Oh, okay, well, figure out how you can.
July is the time we all make half-year self-care resolutions, am I right? Cool. Meditation, aromatherapy, winning the Mountain Regional Knuckle Cracking Championships. Oh yeah, didn't have any in there that time. We'll try again later. The problem is that it's really hard to keep up with those habits. But one bit of self-care that is completely effortless is getting a new set of signature hemmed sheets from Boll and Branch. Since I got my new Boll and Branch sheets, I have been sleeping better and can truly relax under what I know is the finest 100% organic cotton on earth. No more stressing out at 3 a.m. the night before the MRKCCs. You know what's up. These days, my knuckles are in top-notch shape, and 3-time champ Randy the Tunnel Kowalowski is finally going to meet his match in me. Boll and Branch has designs and colors for every bedroom style and mattress size, and believe it or not, they get softer with every single wash. Actually, you know what? You should believe it, because I'm going to tell you again, they get softer. In fact, I don't even bother with other sheets. I just leave my bed naked and immediately wash my sheets because I never want to sleep without my Boll and Branchies. Anyway, now's your chance to change the way you sleep with Boll and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/SMN. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/SMN to save 15%. Exclusions apply. See site for details. And Kowalski, if that's how you pronounce your name, you better take a look at these pampered knucks. They're coming for you, big boy. Ow! Oh! Got one.
Okay, I shouldn't have called myself Papa. That was weird, and I knew it as I was saying it. I knew it when it was written and edited and filmed, and there, it still happened. I'm sorry, everyone. Papa's been bad. Speaking of things that are bad, Doge still exists. It's hard not to bring that up in our video about weird liars doing weird lies to justify their bad ideas. Like, I know Elon called Trump a pedophile and then groveled to him on his own social media site that he bought but everyone still hates him on. But Doge is still a thing. It's such a thing that the president is now vaguely threatening that they're going to Doge Elon himself. And as we've previously mentioned, the GOP and Doge would absolutely love it if they could cut Social Security without most Americans rising up to destroy them. That means they have to build a world where people don't like Social Security, right? But because Social Security is like good and crap, a majority of Americans love and need and support Social Security. So they're gonna have to plant one of those lie seeds to make Social Security seem bad. But why stop there? If you're gonna demonize a program designed to help vulnerable Americans, you might as well double up by demonizing the people who support that program. Now that's government efficiency. Left-wing politicians are abusing Social Security. It's such a juicy idea that I get why a bunch of people glommed onto it. AOC, the very person pushing back against Musk's claims that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme that he also claims is, I guess, good, but being abused by foreigners, so maybe he's actually just completely full of shit. But AOC is herself scamming Social Security, you see, by cashing in her dead grandmother's checks. That is now just a thing going around in right-wing online circles as if it's common information. They just think this now. Never mind that the original claim originates from the Facebook page America's Last Line of Defense, which comes with the description, quote, "Nothing on this page is real." PolitiFact was kind enough to say that the page was trolling conservatives, but counterpoint, no, it's not. This isn't trolling, it's producing misinformation slop to get clicks and bonus points if it pushes an agenda. This isn't satire or a gag or a jab or a farce or a jape or even a big boffo Sally. It's just a page dedicated to purposefully creating misinformation for conservatives to gobble up and drown themselves further into a fantasy world. Anyway, this just in, Jasmine Crockett is also cashing in her dead grandmother's checks. Wow, what are the odds? This developing story was first discovered and reported by America's Last Line of Defense. Sweet Christ. I know these are just a few shitty online memes, but we mustn't forget that they are orbiting the biggest shitty online meme dispenser of them all, Elon Musk. And unlike some Facebook slop page, Musk has the ability to take his lie seeds, inject them with Shredder's mutagen, and force them to sprout. He's not even just offering his lie seeds to his friends in private. What I mean is, remember when he said this?
One interesting statistic was that 40% of the calls into Social Security were fraudulent, like meaning that it was someone trying to get a Social Security payment that was going to a senior to go to instead to go to a fraud ring. So that was almost half of the phone calls were fraudulent.
That wasn't true. We already pointed this out before, but that simply isn't true. Either because Musk was lying or because he's stupid and didn't understand the data he was looking at. The reality was that 40% of a type of fraud, direct deposit fraud, was attempted via calls to the Social Security agency. Not that 40% of all Social Security calls were fraud. Big difference, immense difference that only a liar or idiot would not recognize. Whoops. He could have just said that, by the way. He could have just said, whoops. But instead, we've now learned that Stephen Miller's wife, Katy Miller, future mother of Elon's next child, we can assume, actually instructed the head of Social Security to change their data to fit Elon's lie. They're literally just trying to make his lie true by ordering others to tell the lie in order to justify dismantling the agency. In fact, they installed some kind of anti-fraud detection software, and out of over 110,000 claims, they found only 2 that had a high probability of possibly being fraud, all while slowing down claim processing by 25%. Bad job. Musk apparently also left a 21-year-old former Palantir intern in charge of the Doge cuts to Social Security. And what's even more incredible than all of this, that intern reportedly has tried to gently correct Elon Musk's lies. So I guess thanks to that 21-year-old intern suddenly in charge of Social Security cuts for doing the right thing, sort of. Hold strong, keep us safe. Scared 21-year-old Palantir intern. You are our only hope. So we're gonna get more of this. Even with Musk gone to focus on exploding more rockets, Trump is still there to carry on the lies and then make new and fun lies. And then order the Social Security Administration to pretend those lies are real and then use those lies to justify cutting the agency. Or I guess just let it slowly get worse until more people want to get rid of it. And not just Social Security, of course, but Medicaid too. You know, that thing that at least 12 million fewer people will probably have soon? Well, they've been laying the groundwork for that by lying to everybody about Medicaid. Here's Musko boosting a story about Doge uncovering, quote, $2.7 trillion in improper payments in Medicare and Medicaid overseas. He added the commentary, biggest fraud operation in human history. If you were a dupe, you might think this is real, considering that surely Elon Musk knows what Doge did and didn't uncover. And yet, this also isn't true. That $2.7 trillion in improper payments was discovered long before Doge even existed. It wasn't exclusively Medicare and Medicaid payments, and it wasn't all cases of fraud, but also administrative errors. So it's kind of fucking wild for Musk to share this like he knows what he's talking about. That means he either has no idea what the agency he ran actually did, or he's a liar who thinks you're stupid. Hey, I bet it's that. They think Americans are so stupid that they can turn public opinion against the things that directly help them. We should really make sure they aren't right about that. And the good news is that so far, even Republicans are very gradually warming up to the concept of government aid. Gradually. Maybe it's a bit of a backfire when the Republican line is that we're wasting all this money on healthcare and aid for immigrants at the expense of the American people. And so the people who are being propagandized to are now pausing and thinking, well, wait, we get that stuff. I want that stuff. They don't get the stuff. We should have that stuff. Most people also seem to understand that while there is always going to be some fraud, the scale isn't there to justify removing the stuff that helps us. Again, even Doge proved this. Yet, here they are, taking people's Medicaid away, and the president is still claiming / lying that it's only the waste and the fraud and the abuse. Anyway, speaking of stuff people are largely supportive of, there sure were a lot of protesters out not too long ago. Jeez. I wonder how much that set back George Soros. All these protesters are being paid. Seriously, I've said it before, I would love it if George Soros funded this show. Oh my God, I'd get a huge boat. Name it No Kings. I'd be just the worst of the help, a real monster. Money would change me. You don't have to run me out like George Hurst in Deadwood. But sadly, Soros has not responded to any of my letters, or all of my screaming outside of his office, or my promise that I'd use any and all of his money to buy myself just the biggest fucking boat. It seems like, despite what the GOP says every time there's a mass demonstration, people aren't being paid to protest on a large scale. I mean, I get it. Republicans have a documented history with fake protests. In fact, here's the current vice president positively quote tweeting a documented fake protester. Generally, I'm sure it's hard for a lot of Republicans to imagine people wanting to fight for something without making a profit off of it. They seem genuinely perplexed by that concept, to the point that boisterous boy of bravery, Josh Hawley, is launching an investigation into who must be bankrolling the ICE protests. Because again, surely people are being paid to stand up for basic morals. Except, here's the thing. I wish it was this stupid and this simple, but it's not. The claim that people are being paid to protest becomes more insidious when you start to actually debunk it. So for example, this Twitter post claiming to have evidence of people paid to be at the anti-Musk demonstrations. In some cases, it is just stupidity. For example, here's Laura Loomer posting evidence that just equates to a guy sleeping on a bus. There's also a TikTok video they keep sharing. This one.
I was one of the paid protesters at the April 5th liberal protests. And so I just wanted to come on and talk about my experience, what I had to do to get paid, and how much I got paid.
It's kind of depressing when you realize that there was a time when a single video of a random person saying something wouldn't be believed by most people. And yeah, if you're wondering, this was satire, at least according to the person who made it.
I posted a satire video, and I thought that was obvious. And before I get into that, I just want to say, anyone can post anything on the internet. Anyone can say anything. They can post anything. They can share anything, apparently.
Hey, that's sort of what I just said. Anyone can post anything on the internet. There was a time when people understood that. It's almost like one of our two political parties launched a campaign against the concept of journalism and convinced several generations to forget basic fact-checking and critical thinking in favor of believing whatever you feel like believing. But that's not important right now. Or rather, it's extremely important. So that's one aspect of the evidence the right wing is claiming proves that protesters are being paid. The stupid aspect. The other aspect is actually more chilling. Going back to that tweet, the other proof being posted, as discovered by PolitiFact, is right-wing people simply equating protest organizing with paid protesters. For example, both right and left groups will organize bus trips to protests, and even then, they will ask for people to pitch in for seats. That is seriously the kind of stuff they're flagging here. They also featured screen grabs of a reimbursement form. That's from the advocacy group Indivisible, which, provided you have receipts, will reimburse up to $200 for costs related to specific supplies for specific events. Stuff like food or renting a space, etc. It's just community shit. And there were no reimbursements for these protests in question. This is all to say that what they are actually going after, what Josh Hawley is looking to attack, is community advocacy groups. He's not going after Soros. He's accusing the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, Party for Socialism and Liberation, and Unión del Barrio for paying protesters. These aren't shadowy political groups. They have their own websites. Extremely legal, extremely out in the open groups that, whether or not you agree with them, can exist. So for the Republicans, this is a win-win. By pretending that these are paid protesters, they get to completely hand-wave their own unpopularity and also justify it whenever a protester is seen getting their head cracked in by a cop or when an advocacy group gets shut down. Because they're paid protesters after all. They're fake now. And I guarantee we're going to see more and more arrests and brutality justified this way. We're likely going to see a law passed called something like the Stop Soros Act, where they make paid protesting illegal and then broadly include advocacy groups in that list. Scratch that. It's called the No Tax Dollars for Riots Act, and it was introduced literally as we were writing this episode. The dystopia is so predictable because at its core, the paid protesting lies are very plainly an attempt to erode free speech. That's it. Sorry. Didn't put it on silent. Just a Venmo notification for this this thing. Don't worry about the thing. It's not from Soros, guy. Calm down, okay? It's drugs. It's drugs, okay? It's just drugs. Don't get distracted. It's not Soros. It's drugs. Okay. The free speech thing is actually pretty serious. It's a specific type of lie whereby pretending a group of people are a completely different and bad group of people, they can try to sway the public to allow them to do whatever they want to those people in the name of justice. Kind of like calling all Mexicans rapists, or everyone at a protest illegal invaders, or everyone at another protest terrorist supporters, or how whenever a right-wing asshole shoots some people, they immediately try to pretend they're actually a leftist in order to simultaneously cover up right-wing extremism while painting their perceived enemy as the bad guy they get to do bad things to. Oh, that reminds me. All this political violence is coming from the left. Okay, but really? Last month, the right-wing extremist went door to door hunting Democratic politicians. This resulted in the murder of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, as well as the wounding of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Did I mention that the shooter was a right-wing extremist? That needs to be said a few times, apparently. By all accounts, he voted for Trump and was a deeply religious conservative doom prepper who worked at his wife's security guard company. And then this cop wannabe shot some people from a list of Democrats. As usual, there was a lot of confusion about who the shooter was when the news first hit. And so, as they do, a lot of digital wraiths used this confusion to immediately blame the left. And not even the far left. Here's Benny Johnston, known idiot who did propaganda for Russia, claiming that the shooter was a Tim Walz appointee. What that actually means, if you're wondering, is that the shooter, Vance Bolter, was appointed to the Minnesota Governor's Workforce Development Board about 6 years ago. That board has over 60 people in it, none of whom are directly interviewed by the governor. Walz actually reappointed Bolter after the guy before Walz originally appointed him. It's a rubber stamp situation. They really want to make it seem like this guy was working for Walz as his henchman. But before this shooting, there's almost no reason that Tim Walz would have even heard his name. You'll also notice that Benny is trying to make this larger point that it's actually the left who are violent. Interesting. Same thing happened when Elon Musk retweeted another post also lying that this shooting was by a Democrat. That's an interesting pattern we're seeing here, isn't it? And while they were lying, they also figured they'd spin it into a larger conspiracy, because why not? Human chode Mike Lee took a break from making jokes about the shooting to imply that this was some kind of assassination from the left. Boy, he shouldn't have a job in politics, should he? Others elaborated on this idea by claiming that Hortman was killed for being the only Democrat to vote to repeal healthcare access to undocumented immigrants, which doesn't make any sense considering that the other victim didn't do that. Not to mention that Hortman absolutely didn't support that repeal, but was simply voting to pass a state budget, which also isn't a valid justification for passing it, but also she was shot by this fucked up MAGA guy, so maybe let her rest in peace. It doesn't really matter, obviously, because we know who the shooter was, and he wasn't an assassin for the violent Marxist Tim Walz. It's rather shocking just how many people on the right simply lied about this. Here's an Ohio senator doing it, just out in the open, and every time you may notice, they are trying to make this bigger point about left-wing violence getting out of hand.
They talk a lot about, the rhetoric and the violence, and yet it seems to be mostly caused by them. The 2020 summer of love did not seem like a summer of love. I would love to see all of that turn down, but I think I'm seeing it come from the left. Everyone talks about Minnesota, but they don't talk about the guy seems to be a leftist. It's a Minnesota politician, or, guy who was appointed by the Democrat governor, vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Tim Walz. The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Walz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
Is that guy on cocaine? Listen to how smug he is, just saying a lie. And watch what happens the moment the reporter points out that he's saying a lie.
Now, I'm not sure about that, by the way, from what I've seen. I think he voted for your dad and things like that from what I've seen.
I'll believe that when I see it. But he was appointed by Tim Walz, a Democrat governor who is, an ardent leftist pushing these things. And he attacked someone who voted against, he attacked a Democrat who voted against giving taxpayer funding and free health care to illegals.
Okay, I'm almost certain that guy's on cocaine. And he just bulldozes that reporter with his horse shit. Because why not? What does it matter to his followers anyway? Even when the shooter was firmly identified, when that cocaine man is told that the shooter voted for Trump, he just deflects. All of these freaks do this. I'll believe it when I see it, and I will not look at it. BS. Trump's base and everyone in his party, of course, will deflect. Here's conspiracy wacko and somehow Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers doing just that. Something doesn't add up, she says. Probably because the shooter isn't the person that would have allowed her to demonize her opposition. It's really rather jarring to see the right wing, in an effort to claim it's the left who are violent and extremist, just completely deny reality before them, spout endless conspiracy theories, while even mocking the assassination of a Democrat. It's you who are the weird ones, sir. Allow me to demonstrate by eating this handful of dirt, which is also shit. Of course, there is a reason they are so eager, desperate even, to pin this shooting on left-wing violence. There is a reason they are trying so hard to act like there is a growing problem with the murderous left. You see, it turns out that since 1994, right-wing attacks account for the majority of terrorist attacks on the United States. One of our two political ideologies that we just accept is also our biggest terrorists, and they've gotten worse recently. I mean, they literally stormed the Capitol on orders from their president. Pretty weird we didn't do something about that. And everyone knows it too, including them. This entire song and dance from Republicans around the recent shooting has the stink of defensiveness, does it not? They hate that it's true, but it is. They are the violent extremists. Here's the woke military Times acknowledging it. Here's a study about it. Here's another study from the 80s that recognizes right-wing extremists as being a bigger threat than left-wing extremists. It's just a fact. Even Grok knows it. When asked which party is more violent, Grok firmly pointed his cringy little matrix finger at the right. Don't worry though, Elon is gonna fix that to make Grok a liar, so to satisfy the alternate reality to which his site now panders. Sorry folks, that's just the way it is. So sorry. Maybe fix your party instead of trying to change the narrative. But of course, it's easier to flip the script. After all, if they do successfully blame all right-wing violence on the left, they not only get to deflect responsibility from themselves, but justify any crackdown or violence against the left and justify any further right-wing violence as being defensive. See Rittenhouse, Kyle. Also, see ads, I don't know, whatever. Just watch these ads and don't skip them, okay? They know when you skip them and they punish me.
There are 3 things in this world that really stick in Katie's craw. Tangled up phone cords, empty cartons of milk put back in the fridge, and hair thinning. We unfortunately do not have sponsors for those first 2 things, but for the third, there's Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. You can see thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Even if the product itself cannot, unfortunately, untangle these dang landline phone cords, which I still use by the dozens, in lots of different ways. Anyway, Nutrafol has multiple formulas for different people and life stages, like perimenopausal, prenatal, etc. because everyone is different, and a one-size-fits-all approach does not cut it. So, start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code SMN. Unfortunately, they cannot force your roommate to put a clearly empty carton of milk in the gosh darn trash instead of the back of the fridge for some reason, but they can help with improved hair growth. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com. Promo code SMN. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code SMN.
You know me, folks. I like to mix it up. There's very little I do every single day. Making coffee, taking a shower, feeding the magic sentient goldfish I inherited from the Eastern European ant I didn't know I had. That's it! Those 3 things, plus starting off the day with AG1, my daily health drink that contains more than 75 vitamins, pre- and probiotics, and a number of superfoods that improve my digestion and gut health. It's a great habit that's easy to maintain, since it only takes 30 seconds per day. The goldfish eats regular fish food and begs me for this stuff, but it's my energy-supporting daily beverage. You can't have it. Hands off! Mine! I did that way faster than 30 seconds. Woo! Take that, Diamond Splendor, the goldfish that I'm legally not allowed to rename thanks to Aunt Anya. Start giving your body the nutrients it deserves. Just head to our link, drinkag1.com/more news, to subscribe for less than $3 a day. If you use my link, you'll also get a free welcome kit with a shaker bottle, 5 AG1 travel packs, and more with your first purchase. That's drinkag1.com/more news. Don't chug this right after you eat a big sandwich for lunch. Or do. Clearly I'm fine.
Movie lovers! Summer movies are about action, action, action! And also comedy, romance, drama, crime, spy stuff, mystery, and monsters. But especially action! Pew, 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 pew! And you can feel the explosive action all summer long on Pluto TV with movies like Gladiator, Beverly Hills Cop, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Great Gravy, Good Burger, Stealth Gravy, Gravy of the Fireflies, the California Coconut Kids Club, Gravy from the Heart, the Peter Falk Story, Episode 1, Four Brothers, Star Trek, Camp Down Gravy, Sing This Song, and Pour Me a Foster's, you didgeridoo. So bring the action with you and stream for free on all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
You skipped them, didn't you? God damn it. You don't understand how hard this industry is, man. They're gonna take my toes. It's fine. I don't need toes. I'm not a ballerina. I don't need toes. Okay, so we got one more lie left, and it's a bit of a doozy. Because while everything we've talked about has weight, some lie seeds can grow further and bigger than others. That's just how seeds work, I think. Everything I grow dies. Slowly, too. I have to watch it happen. The judiciary's check on the president is tyranny. You know, it's weird having to sit here and defend judges. I don't particularly like judges. They're always so judgy, in their robes. What's under there? Show me. Show me what's under there, judge. If we're talking about the Supreme Court, then statistically speaking, it's a penis under there. A swollen old penis. But I guess in this new bizarro world, I'm gonna have to sit here and defend these huge-dicked squares. Because it appears that a large portion of conservatives have forgotten how the 3 branches of government work and are now attacking judges for just doing their job. First, of course, they like to claim that defying court orders is just a thing presidents do, like how Biden did with student loan forgiveness. Except what happened there is, not that. The court ruled against him, so he stopped. He tried to find other ways to do the thing he wanted to do. He didn't defy the order. But if he did, according to them, that's also good because they've never heard of checks and balances? The Daily Wire, a site whose poster boy dressed like John Adams for Halloween as a kid, is now completely perplexed and angry about how democracy works. Here they are posting a killer meme reading, "Silence, President of the United States that the majority of the country voted for. A random unelected judge you've never heard of in your life is talking." Boy, if there was anything worse than defending judges, it's reading a fucking meme aloud. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for making me feel like a dweeb. A real Ben. Also, importantly, no, Trump did not win with a majority. The word is plurality. That's not really the part of the meme I'm concerned about, though. It's more that it's part of a larger pattern of right-wing freaks trying to claim that the judicial branch is now rogue or tyrannical simply for doing their jobs. So I guess for Ben Shapiro's sake, I'm going to explain now how the judicial system works and by extension, checks and balances. Are you paying attention, Ben? Have you been practicing your arpeggios? Battle of the Bands is next month. So when a president, that's the guy in charge of the executive branch, makes an executive order, that order can affect people. The order isn't a law, it's a policy, a decree or suggestion of action. Executive orders can affect people, especially if that order violates the Constitution or other actual laws. For example, trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, an act which directly violates the Constitution. That means people can sue over the executive order. That lawsuit goes to a judge who issues an injunction. That's a halt on whatever the policy is so that everyone can get together and decide if it's indeed against the law or Constitution. Do you understand so far, Ben? This isn't some rogue judge inserting his will upon the nation. It's just how the legal system works. If my neighbor sued me for playing Hoobastank on full blast 24/7, a judge might order an injunction to stop me from my free expression of my love for Hoobastank. And no other people want to rise up for Hoobastank. Okay, well, Ben knows this, of course. He just doesn't care. Nor does J.D. Vance care when he openly lies about what powers judges have. Nor does Elon Musk care when he helps dox the daughter of one of these judges. Anything they can do, any lie they can make, will help chip away at the public perception of judges until, well, we all know where it's heading. Judges are getting arrested. They're facing death threats. And on a larger scale, the Republicans are going to use this lie as an excuse to limit their powers altogether.
I rise in support of the No Rogue Rulings Act, a bold and necessary step to rein in activist judges who have made it their sole mission to obstruct the agenda of President Donald J. Trump.
This is basically one branch of the government saying, hey now, we don't like being held accountable, and waging war on another branch of the government. This No Rogue Rulings Act might seem reasonable at first. The law basically wants to stop judges from issuing injunctions unless they apply to the specific parties in the case. Meaning that if someone, perhaps a trans soldier, sued over the trans military ban, the injunction to temporarily lift that ban would only apply to that one soldier. But in dealing with constitutional matters, you see how this kind of misses the point. This is a problem affecting the basic rights of a lot of people. And that's part of the reason they're suing. Do they want every trans soldier to have to file their own lawsuit? Yes. Yes, they do. Because most of them wouldn't or couldn't. But if they did, it would, I assume, gunk up the system in a way that ensures nothing gets done. Every lawsuit has to be a class action lawsuit in each state, I guess. Incidentally, Republicans have historically railed against class action lawsuits and have introduced and passed legislation to make class action lawsuits rarer and more difficult. When it comes to things like birthright citizenship, it's hard to even know who has to sue there. I guess unborn theoretical people, which the GOP do love to defend. So it's silly, inefficient, and makes no legal sense, which I think they know. They also tried to sneak a similar measure into the big, beautiful Bill Act, but thankfully the Democrats stepped in there. Unfortunately, plot twist, it appears they didn't need a silly law, because the Supreme Court just ruled that federal courts can't issue nationwide injunctions concerning birthright citizenship, or anything. Maybe? It's unclear still at this point. But that's right, the judicial system willingly ceded its power in the lower courts, probably in exchange for tickets to Six Flags and a new Ford Explorer. Ultimately, what's actually happening here is simple. The president is doing illegal things. He's trying to pass laws or go to fucking war without going through the actual process those actions require. You know, like a dictator would. And instead of standing up to them, a large portion of cowards has instead attempted to change the rules retroactively so that they don't have to confront the situation. In the case of the Supreme Court, well, they've been long compromised by partisan groups, compiled by the Conservative Federalist Society specifically to defy logic and the Constitution in favor of GOP policies. They are now waging war on the lower courts in this quest. And amazingly, it's still not enough for some people in Trump's administration. People like Stephen Miller, the Human Condom, whose America First legal foundation is currently suing the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in order to just flat out force them to cede power to the executive branch. Specifically, he wants to move the Judicial Conference of the U.S. and the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts under Trump. The latter office would give him control of funding and court records. The former would give him control over policymaking and the impartiality of the federal courts. This would be, as you can imagine, very bad. It's very plainly taking the concept of separation of power, but still putting the president at the top with all the powers. It goes against the entire point of having a separate judicial system. And Stevie knows it. Ben knows it. John Adams knows it, Ben. They all know it. That's why Miller has to go on the White House lawn and make his pouty little squint face at some cameras and say this.
This is a judicial coup by communist Marxist judges against the laws, Constitution, and democracy of the United States.
Jesus Christ, what a Nazi. Have you noticed that more and more common things are, in general, becoming Marxist and communist and the radical left? Public television, communist. The mainstream moderate Democrats, radical leftists. Fucking USAID, Marxists. It's everything. They called Barbie a fucking communist. Barbie is literally a capitalist product. Do you feel like you're being overrun by communists? Or does it feel like perhaps there's a group of people moving so radically far toward fascism that normal, everyday, often non-political things are now being called leftist to them? This accusation swallowing everything up so that they can justify rebuilding it in their image. No, the courts aren't radical communist leftist Marxists, but Stephen Miller is Nazi scum. As I just pointed out, the court has been specifically built to be more right-wing. Famously so, the Supreme Court has a conservative majority. People appointed by Trump and those Bushes. Republicans have been spending years, decades, reshaping the courts. And now they want us to think that they're radical leftists? Come the fuck on. That is such an obvious lie that it's actually a little insulting. But do they care? They're building an entire world, after all, building lie atop lie, so that policy can be passed based on fantasy that they treat as common knowledge. And by the time someone realizes the first lie is a lie, they've already built a bunch of lies on top of that lie. And in this case, they really want us to think that these unpopular actions are actually good and wanted. Starting with the idea that the president doing these actions is actually good and wanted.
What, are you kidding me? 56% approval in a brand new Rasmussen poll for President Trump. 56% of the American people think he's doing a great job. That is a landslide. That is awesome.
That is not a landslide. I don't even need to cite a source. The number being shared in the video isn't a landslide. Also, and this is a bit pedantic, but as we've recently discussed, the right's war on words can require vigilant pedantry. Polls don't have landslides. That's just not what we use the term for. Elections have landslide victories, but this is a poll. It's a poll you like. But also, the number in the video that libs of TikTok is so amazed about is a lie. The only time he hit 56% in the Rasmussen poll was when he was sworn in 6 months ago. Since then, he's been floating around 50%. You can just go on their website and see. It's just lies. Very obvious lies. Also, it's literally just this one poller. All non-Rasmussen polls show him in a much worse position on every issue. Reverse landslide, even. But because a portion of America has rejected all mainstream media and all institutions and opted to believe these propagandists, they can literally just lie unchecked. Build a mirror universe where judges are radical lefties, Democrats are violent criminals who bankroll mass protests with their Social Security scam money, all so they can let the gays adopt kids so that they can abort those kids and turn their debris into autism vaccines. And then they're going to make us all live in that fake world and make policy based on that fake world, which frankly fucking sucks. And the only way to prevent that is to pull out the lies at the root. Stop them before they grow. But man, it sucks. They're growing. It really, really sucks. Why couldn't they build a fun fantasy world at least with dragons and magic and Rolly Archdale, who owns a pet salon, saving up until I get my veterinary degree? No, who's Rolly? I'm saving up to get my veterinary degree. I am. Yeah, there we are. I'm Rolly. I'm gonna move back to Morecambe and start my own practice. Rolly's Infirmary for gummy pooches and ailing puss. For your wee fluffies, grummer crackle, Rolly's on the case. All right. Rolly, what was that? I don't know. You gotta work on that, man. Oh no! I'm working on it! What? Like, seriously, it's so bad. Oh no! Oi, like and subscribe. We're here in the down under, across the pond, and we're asking you up north and down to south to taste. Leave a comment. Look, just like and subscribe, please. Thank you so much. We've got a patreon.com/some more news. We've got a podcast called Even More News. You can listen to it or watch it here on YouTube twice a week. You can listen to this show, Some More News, as a podcast if you'd prefer to not see my face, but rather hear my great voice. Grating voice? Great voice. We've got a merch store with merch on it. Merch is on the merch store. Imagine that. Look at it. Look. Warmbo's there. And his British counterpart. Also Warmbo. He doesn't have an accent. Because he's fake.
What? Is it fake? You're fake!
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.